Boy, I'm so glad to be back here. It's so nice to see everybody in the booth, rocking it, ready to go. And we got Trent Horn this hour. Next hour, Paul Darrow. The number is 888-318-7884. Let me tell you a little bit about our guests. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. You're listening to Catholic Answers Live. Second hour, Paul Darrow. You might know him from the film, The Desire for the Everlasting Hills. And we're going to talk about same-sex attraction and the Catholic Church, the Catholic faith. If you have questions in that regard, whether you're Catholic or not, you are welcome. 888-318-7884. That's second hour. First hour, it's always good to start the week off with a little bit of Trent Horn. Tips for defending the faith this hour from one of the best. If you'd like tips for defending the Catholic faith, this is your opportunity. 888-318-7884. Trent is the author of 1 million different books, including Why We're Catholic, Can a Catholic Be a Socialist? Things the Saints Never Said. Hey, Trent.
Howdy, Cy.
Thanks for being here with us.
Absolutely.
I'm fired up for Monday, man. I am ready to go. Are you ready to do some defending the faith with people?
Let's do it.
888-318-7884. The number 888-318-7884. Trent, it seems like I apologize if I missed something, but it seems like we've gone more than 6 months without a new Trent Horn book. What's going on?
Hopefully, it will not be much longer. I have submitted the final manuscript for a dialogue book called Devil's Advocate, Confronting My Inner Anti-Catholic. And it is a book about the inner dialogue that I have with the little voice of skepticism in my head and how I resolve that. And I think it'll be a good framework for helping other people. So I talk about the different points of the faith that I find could be problematic, at least for me, how I resolve that. And I think it's a fun and engaging way to talk about wrestling with doubt and understanding the faith more. So I think people will get a big kick out of it.
Again, the number 888-318-7884. That is a great idea for a book. I really like that. But you're telling me one of the world's great apologists for the Catholic faith in the under 80 category has faced reservations, questions, conundrums, problems.
Yes. One question that pops in my mind right now is this. Who would you think is the greatest in the over 80 category, apologists of the faith?
I think we all know. I'm just going to leave it there. I think we all know. I have
I think it would be a lot of hubris for you to try to place yourself in that category. But you are a good apologist. So, I mean, I'll say that about you.
I'm not even close to 80. What are you talking about?
I'll say that about
you.
You're
a madman, Trent Horn. You're a madman.
Cy, you don't have to shout in the microphone. This technology is very new. It can pick you up just fine. So I need to be cantankerous.
Every time someone sits in this chair, they're like, "Who sits here? These headphones are turned up so loud." And I do have hearing that's something like an elderly person, and I know that a lot of people don't like the word elderly. So what I mean by that is old person. I know that I have that quality of hearing, but despite how I look, I'm not over 80. I'm well under 80.
That's fair enough. I think it'd probably be best to put someone maybe like Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. Maybe we put him. I might put him at a top rung there, perhaps.
I wanted to say Peter Kraft, but I couldn't remember how old he is, and I'm afraid I'll get calls be like, Peter Kraft is 53, and I'll be like, wow, he doesn't. He's looking kind of old.
It's all that surfing and saltwater is good for him.
888-318-7884. Go ahead, Trent. What were you going to say?
Oh, you know what? He might. He could tie with Pope Benedict. He is 84 years old.
See, all right, good. Whew.
That saltwater and Sierra is good for you. I think that's one of his favorite books. I had a friend of mine once was talking to Peter Kraft and wanted to talk to him about books, and he wasn't like super interested in the conversation. And then another guy chimed in and said, "I really liked your book on surfing." And he was like, "Oh, let's talk about that." So it's just so funny.
Yeah,
like that was the one that got him really fired up.
Did you contribute to Brandon Vaught's new book on? I say Brandon Vaught's new book, but I think he was the editor of a new book of essays in praise of Peter Kraft. Were you one of the people who wrote in there?
Yes, the book is called Wisdom and Wonder, How Peter Kraft Shaped the Next Generation of Catholics. It's an anthology series of people writing about Dr. Kraft's work. I chose to write about his pro-life work, especially his dialogue book, The Unaborted Socrates. And I was the only person who actually offered to write about his pro-life work, and that was a really big influence for me.
Yeah.
And also that his dialogues are just so masterful. They really inspired me to want to do this, because I think the dialogue, I haven't seen a really solid dialogue book in apologetics since Crafts, and those were written primarily back in the 80s. So, it would just be, this is something I've tried to offer similar in its place, if you will.
Trent Horn's our guest. 888-318-7884 is the number. If you need some help defending some aspect of the faith, explaining some aspect of the faith, helping someone over some obstacle to the faith, this is the time for you to call. Tips for defending the faith this hour with Trent Horn. 888-318-7884. First up, Indiana. David, listening to EWTN on channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. You are up, David. Go ahead with your question for Trent.
All right. I was going to ask, when I reconverted to the faith, I found out going down the rabbit hole that extra ecclesiam nullis salus, that there was no salvation outside the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do believe it, and I love all the dogmas and doctrines of the church, but some of my family members are Protestant, and I really fear for their soul, but I'm afraid in an American culture, it's hard to tell someone that there's an absolute truth and the sacraments are necessary for life. How
Right.
would you show people the importance of converting while not making them feel as if, do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's no salvation outside the church, but how do you show it the way Jesus would?
How do I do it the way Jesus would? The most creative, inventive person of all time, of course, because he is our Lord and Savior, God the Son. How would I do that? I think what's important is to help people, like just simple, bite-sized ways of understanding this. So the phrase "no salvation outside of the church" goes all the way back, I think, to Saint Cyprian of Carthage in the 3rd century, and it's continually been affirmed by fathers of the church, by popes. It's been taught throughout the church's history. But it's important to shy away from an extreme view of the doctrine. And an extreme view of it would say that it is impossible for anyone who is not a baptized Catholic in good standing with the church to go to heaven. So that is not what the church teaches. And even you look at the doctrine, how it's developed over the course of 2,000 years, you see more of an understanding of, well, when missionaries came across Native Americans who, before in the church's history, you had pagans, you had Jews, but meeting people who never had the opportunity to know who Jesus was for centuries or over a millennia, the church had to develop its understanding of what it means by this. So I think for the two groups here, one would be non-Christians, the other would be non-Catholic Christians like Protestants. For non-Christians, we should hone in on saying the only thing that can save you is Jesus. Buddha will not get you to heaven. Muhammad will not get you to heaven. Oprah will not get you to heaven. It is only Jesus Christ. It's not like if you are a Buddhist or a Hindu and you get to the pearly gates, St. Peter will say, oh, yeah, Buddha has an inn here too as well. So you're good. Come on in. It is a person who belongs to another religion will be saved if they are saved, will be saved in spite of it. So I think you could say to people, look, does Buddha take away sin? No. Does Krishna take away sin? No. So it is the only thing that takes away sin is Jesus Christ. So I think that's something you could say to someone, look, either Jesus does take away sin and nothing else does, or Jesus doesn't matter and none of it matters. So I'd focus on that with someone who is a non-Christian. Then someone who is a Christian, but they're a non-Catholic, I might say, well, if we're to believe in Jesus, I think it's John 3:36 says that whoever believes in the Son and obeys him will enter into the kingdom. So it's not just believing Jesus. You have to say, well, don't we also have to obey Jesus too? What does Jesus want us to do? Not what we think he wants, or what does he say? Like you look in John chapter 6 when he talks about how we must eat his flesh and drink his blood to have eternal life, which I would say makes the most sense in light of the doctrine of the Eucharist. So I could say that if you're a Protestant and you don't know this is what Jesus requires because you've been raised in a different denomination, there is still a possibility you can be saved if you know that you need to be in union with the church, receiving the Eucharist, in union with the Catholic Church, and you reject that, and you know it, and you still reject it anyways. Maybe you don't want family drama. Well, you're putting your soul in real jeopardy here in doing that. So I think I might bring up these things to say that if we believe in Jesus, we all agree on that. Shouldn't we obey him? What does he want us to do? And we really disagree about what Jesus wants us to do. So I might try that approach. David, if you'd like, I'd be happy to send you a copy of my book, Why We're Catholic, and it might help you with some other non-Catholic friends and family members. Just stay on the line, and we'll get that to you. Just give our call screener your your address. We can mail it to you.
Hang on, David, and Edgar will be right with you. And that's a perfect time for me to let our listeners know that Why We're Catholic has now sold more than 250,000 copies. It's the go-to book when it comes to explaining the Catholic faith. A perfect book for parish distribution during Easter and Lent. And lots of people have said just wonderful things about it and helped many people into the church. Pick up a copy of the book everyone's talking about. Better yet, pick up a case and hand them out to friends and family. Why We're Catholic is available as a softcover book in a case of 20 at a deeply discounted price right now, or as an ebook or on Audible. Get your copies. For more information, whywearecatholic.com.
Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
More to Life is all about exploring what it means to live the Catholic difference in everything we do.
Our goal is to help people see that when they are connected to His grace, there is so much more to life.
More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Just trying to upset Sarah by letting that music play out till it got quiet. Don't worry. Everything's fine here, Sarah. Trent Horn is our guest. The number is 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. Tips for defending the faith this hour with Trent Horn, author of Why We're Catholic and many other books, as a matter of fact. 888-318-7884. Watching YouTube down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Daniel is next. Daniel, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Trent.
Hey, Trent. Hey, Cy. I appreciate you guys taking my call. Trent, my question is kind of related to your own personal experience in conversations with people. I'm a convert. I was an atheist for many years and throughout college. And one of the things that kind of started the process for me, especially along morality, was did I not want to believe in God because I wanted to do anything? So, if I didn't believe in God, that gives me kind of free reign to, do all the bad things or immoral things that are under the faith. And that kind of started this whole process for me on that kind of journey and realizing that that wasn't a good enough argument, at least in my kind of my view. And my question to you is, do you feel in your personal experience that most people kind of defend in a way that to the excuse that they can just do whatever they want moralistically, and then they kind of have all these arguments just to kind of justify that? Or do you feel that the majority of people actually struggle and kind of the arguments just don't kind of get through their head, if that makes sense?
Well, I think when questions like these are asked, it's important to be fair to all parties. I think that rationalizing a decision after the fact is a human tendency that everyone does, Catholic and non-Catholic. So I think that you might ask, well, why are so many atheists or certain people, why are they not religious? And it would be hard for me to make a kind of sweeping claim over such a diverse group of people. But I do think in many cases there are moral objections that raise themselves up first before intellectual objections. And many times the intellectual objections are used to justify the initial moral objection. So I also think, though, there are people who choose Catholicism. Maybe they didn't go through all the intellectual arguments, but they apprehended some kind of good within the Catholic faith that they desired. And then later the intellectual arguments followed. So I don't want to pigeonhole atheists or anything like that, because I think everybody can do something like this. And I think what's important is the truth of what you believe, even if you got there in kind of a roundabout way. I do think, though, when I engage many atheists, especially those who are very hostile to Catholicism, there's like a deep emotional engine, locomotive pulling the train, and they're kind of throwing a lot of these objections out that are not very well thought out. Some atheists do have well thought out objections, but I think that those who have well thought out methods of understanding the faith, whether they're for or against it, tend to be in the minority, really. A lot of people in life in general, I think they let their passions or emotions guide them more strictly than just the intellect. But I remember talking to a girl once at a university campus why she wasn't Catholic, and she gave these intellectual reasons, and she couldn't end up defending them when I asked her follow-up questions. And she said it was basically because she wanted to live with her boyfriend, and her Catholic friends told her it was a sin for her to live with her boyfriend before marriage, to be in a sexual relationship before marriage. And she just got sick of hearing that. So I think that can happen, but I do think that even if there were someone who's an atheist for a bad reason, that wouldn't disprove atheism, just like someone could be a Catholic for a not great reason. That wouldn't disprove Catholicism. We have to look at the evidence for and against each, but if someone is really emotional against the faith and throws out a bunch of objections, it's good to answer them, but you might have to dig a little deeper to whatever is kind of the emotional problem that might be bothering them a little bit more if you're going to really make some good headway. So I don't know if that makes sense, if that helps.
Daniel?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I greatly appreciate your response. I'm the only religious person out of my whole friend group from high school that still keep together. So maybe I'm just trying to psychoanalyze about why didn't this click for them when it clicked for me, and But I really greatly appreciate all your work you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no problem. Definitely keep up all your good work. Thank you so much.
Going down to, back up to Ohio now. Joel in Ohio, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. It's Tips for Defending the Faith. Trent Horn is our guest. Joel, go ahead with your question for Trent.
Yeah, so I do a devotion or just kind of read a children's Bible with my kids we try to a lot of times. And one of the questions that came up from my 8-year-old, Elijah, was, why does the devil exist? Why did God allow him to exist, and kind of where did he come from? So if it's all right, we're all in the car together, and we'll just listen to the answer. I'll hang up.
You sound like such an awesome dad, Joel. I like that, Joel. Hi to everybody in the car.
Yeah.
Griffin and Ruby.
Oh, wonderful. All righty. Well, Joel, here's how I would answer the question. Where the Bible does tell us there's a simple answer and a more complex answer. Why does the devil exist? The simple answer is just the backstory that our faith shares with us. That the devil was originally an angel who served God, one of the highest of the angels, and his name was Lucifer. And he and some of the other angels, a third of them, chose to rebel against God. They did not want to serve God. They probably committed the sin of pride. They thought that they knew what was better than God's plan for them. So they were proud. They thought that they could do things better than God. And so the devil was an angel who served God, who fell from God's grace, and now opposes God, hates the good, hates believers, and wants them to be miserable just like him. So that's where the devil comes from. The next question is, well, why would God let somebody be out like that who would do something bad? And the short answer is that God allows for people who do bad things to exist, because God can always bring more good from any evil that exists. Evil is not a thing that God made. It's an absence of goodness. God is pure, perfect goodness itself. And so God just is goodness. Evil is when there's an absence of good. Evil is kind of like cold or darkness. It's an absence of light or heat. So God allows people that exist to have an absence of goodness in their souls or in their hearts, because God can allow them to do evil so that more good can come. We look in the book of Genesis, for example. Genesis chapter 50, the patriarch Joseph, his brothers were jealous of him. They sold him into slavery, and then later Joseph became a leader in Egypt and saved his family from starvation. And he told his brothers when they reunited, I think it's Genesis 50:12 or verse 20, 12 or 20. He said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good, for the salvation of many people." And so God allowed the devil to tempt Adam and Eve. He allowed the human race to fall, so there could be a greater good from that. So we would have different goods, like the good of showing courage, of forgiveness, of love, of free choice, of choosing good or evil. And also another good that we talk about when God became man, the good of the incarnation. That's a little speculative, but it seems that God becoming man, it's called Felix Culpa, the happy fault, that in Adam sinning, now God gave an even more glorious plan available to save us from our sins through the incarnation, through God becoming man. So any evil we see, we may not understand, why does God let this bad thing happen? Because God is all-knowing, and because God is all-powerful, he can always make sure there's more good no matter how much evil there is. And he's kind of like the master painter. If you look at the painting up close, you might only see black specks. You might think it's ugly and it's worthless, but if you take a step back from God's perspective, you see the whole painting, how the shadows make sense with the light in the painting, and you see the masterpiece that God has made. And I think that can help us. I would recommend if you visit our website at Catholic.com, my friend Jimmy Akin has a DVD on this called The Problem of Evil, if you would like to go deeper into the subject or watch it with your kiddos. But thank you so much for calling in.
And I hope the whole family enjoys the car ride. You should, if you're out at this time, you should join us on Friday. We're going to do the quiz show, and families love playing the quiz show. We get all kinds of letters and emails and messages about the family just loves the old quiz show. So, thanks, Joel. You do really sound like a great father. The number is 888-318-7884. Ask Trent whatever you need help on in defending the faith. 888-318-7884. Kelly in New Jersey, listening on 89.3 FM. We're glad to have you, Kelly. Please go ahead with your question for Trent.
Having me. So my question's kind of on the news topic that has been circling around about the baptisms that are invalid. I don't even remember where it happened in, I believe, the United States.
It was Phoenix, but this has happened before.
The priest said we.
Yeah, this is like, right. He said we, not I, and it invalidates, at least a decade of baptisms. And this is something that I looked into, and I was like, okay, this is clearly an issue. The ruling has been said, and we must move forward. People that had that baptism, they need to get rebaptized. But whenever I talk about it with family members, friends, everyone starts getting issues. They roll their eyes, and what are you talking about? Oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. My thought would be, well, that's what the church said, and I mean, I'm very big on, just authority, and well, that's what the rule is, so that's what the rule is. But not a lot of people see it that way, so I was just kind of wondering how to have that conversation with people to get them to maybe at least hear out why the ruling is so important and why the validity is important to be reestablished with a new baptism, because everyone's like, well, why would Jesus, say it's not valid anymore?
Right, and this is the idea that Jesus doesn't care about rules. Jesus doesn't care about these kinds of things. It doesn't matter to him. How do we, and I think I push the burden of proof on people to say, how do you know that? How do you know that you're taking your 21st century intuition of nothing really matters in the world of the sacred and everything's kind of kumbaya, and you're forcing it onto Jesus instead of letting Jesus speak? To say, well, look, did Jesus give us a church with authority to bind and loose? So he says in Matthew 16 and Matthew 18. Did Jesus tell us how to baptize? He says in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So here the question is, well, we got a priest. He said we instead of I. Is it really such a big deal? I would ask your friends, I might take a Socratic approach and ask them, okay, when do you think it would be a big deal? And you wouldn't be rebaptized, by the way. You would just be baptized because the previous act was not an actual baptism if you use an invalid formula or matter or things like that. So I might ask them a question to say, well, what if it was, I baptize you in the name of the Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier? And you could ask them, do you think that's valid or not? So I think I might take a Socratic approach. I hope that's helpful for you, Kelly. I'll put a bow on this, though, when we come back at the end of the break.
Hang on, right back with more with Trent Horn. Tips for defending the faith. Your questions very, very welcome. 888-318-7884.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com. Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Oh, I always feel so good getting back here for this first hour on Monday. Thanks for being with us. We really do appreciate that you take the time, and we like being here, and we appreciate the calls. And there are lots and lots of people on the line right now. Right now, we're talking with Kelly in New Jersey, who was asking about that we versus I on the baptism thing. And I think Kelly's experience is a rather common one. If you want to try to defend the church's position, there's lots of people who see this as petty and legalistic. So you got to have
Catholics. There's prominent Catholics. There's certain Jesuits that like writing on the National Catholic Reporter that never run out of things to gripe about with the church.
No, I got to go find out who that is. Or are you going to tell me who that is?
Well, I'll let that be for now. But it's someone that I've engaged in camo pieces. I think I can say it's Father Thomas Reese, and he's had a track record of writing about very controversial things about that. Well, we just need to get beyond, basically. And I disagreed. I think I've written an article about one of his things a while back, or a episode on my podcast.
But before you go back to answering Kelly, can I tell you something that I noticed, Trent? Other than in opinion pieces, in news stories about this, the media generally did a very good job of describing this. And I'm always mad at the media. I'm always mad at them about the way they report Catholic stuff. On this one, in general, I got to say they did a good job. They explained that the ones I read explained that the Catholic Church believes Christ is the one who baptizes. And so if you say we, then you've made a fundamental mistake. And now, maybe they were chuckling to themselves as they wrote it, but even the crazy spots in their news reporting, not their opinion pieces, would generally explain this well.
Yeah, because I think they're more trying to understand this bit of sacramental theology than just like moral theology, like IVF or something like that. They're saying, oh, okay, let's try to. It'd be like trying to explain in a news article why Muslims are offended at visual depictions of Muhammad, for example. Whereas many other people might be like, well, what's the big deal here? And trying to understand where the person is coming from. I've also noticed it's really fascinating here that a few things I'll add on. We live in a culture where apparently if you insist a certain pronoun must be used and you don't agree with that, then you're a bigot or you're hateful. But here, at the insistence that pronouns matter, we're told pronouns don't matter.
I didn't hear
that. Oh my
angle
gosh,
before.
we, I. What does it matter? Oh my gosh, you're being so petty. We, I. Who cares? Yeah. Anywhere else, if I said he, she, what does it matter? Gosh, you're being so petty. I would be branded a bigot for saying that. This is the church speaking about its own baptisms, about what makes them valid or invalid. So that's one point I found interesting. And what I said at the close of before we went to break earlier was I think a Socratic approach can be helpful with people who say, it doesn't matter, who cares? Okay, and I brought up also, talking about the church binding and loosing, the church's authority. Does the church have authority to tell us what is and isn't okay? But to ask them, okay, where do you draw the line where someone should step in? Like if you're going to have your baby baptized, okay? You're going to have your baby baptized and the priest gets up there and what if he says, in the name of the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Sanctifier? That's something you can find a lot of frou-frou-y parishes that are in the Catholic tradition or whatever, that are... You could just tell some parishes when you go to them, I walk in with the architecture, I'm like, we'll see how this goes. But that the CDF has had to issue a dubia on that. Not a dubia, had to issue a responsum because that does happen. Not common, but it does happen. People, in order to make it gender neutral, instead of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, would you be okay with your priest saying Creator, Redeemer, Sanctifier? What if it got more weird? The priest says, I baptize you in the name of the Great Spirit. And some people who just only do baptize their kids because they want to please their 95-year-old Catholic grandmother, they wouldn't give a rip what the priest says. So that won't be helpful for them. They have more fundamental issues. But others might say, no, you shouldn't say the Great Spirit. No, you shouldn't say Creator, Redeemer, Sanctifier. But why? You've noticed that there's a certain fundamental element that's missing. So you're drawing a line somewhere. I would say is that everybody draws a line. And I would ask them, why do you draw it there? And I would say that makes the most sense for laws related to the liturgy and the sacraments, the church tells us where that line is drawn. And so why should we think we have more authority than them in that era? So I go down this line of questioning to, one, establish it makes sense to draw a line of what is and isn't valid versus merely licit or illicit. Because, for example, if you baptize your baby at home yourself and you say the correct words and you have the right intention, that's a valid baptism. But if you didn't have a grave reason, it's illicit. No, you're not supposed to do that. But valid, invalid, it either is a baptism or it isn't. Everybody draws a line. If we agree on that, then we have to ask who has the most authority to draw the line in a particular case. So that might be kind of tack that I would take in that regard.
Kelly, what do you think of that?
I think that's really helpful. The pronouns comment really struck me.
I know.
I hope so.
Really stuck out. I never thought of that, and that
I didn't either. But I'll leave it to Trent.
Simple.
But I got a question, Kelly. Hang on a second, because I'm going to ask Trent this and see if you want to follow up. But okay, so on our Facebook page, a couple of people asking kind of follow-ups for you, and I want to address those. One, Donald asks, what about the baptism of intention? Or I might say, what about the baptism of desire? If the person desired, like we say, all right, I'm going to the church to get baptized. I'm on my way there. I'm walking down the street. And then a meteor falls out of the sky and hits a ladder, and there's a guy standing on the ladder, and he falls down and he hits a car and he takes the brake off the car, and the car rolls down the street and kills me before I can get this happens. So I wanted to just say it that way.
Only in the Final Destination movies, but go ahead.
So now I didn't make it to get baptized, but I had the desire to get baptized. So they say, well, the salvific graces are yours. Why can't we just say that?
Well, we can't say that because God has given us an ordinary means of salvation. Paragraph 1257 of the Catechism.
It's the Catechism of the Catholic Church. If you were looking for the name of it, it's called Catechism of the Catholic Church.
Yes, I accidentally sent I accidentally sent what could have been perceived as a sarcastic message to our call screener, and I was correcting them that I was actually quite sincere.
Okay.
So paragraph 1257 in the Catechism says that God has bound salvation to the sacrament of baptism, but he himself is not bound by the sacraments. So he has given us baptism to save. It's the ordinary means. And we have to then say, okay, what does that word mean? What does it mean? When you're baptizing someone. That's why we have all these different, this is a baptism, this is not a baptism. Creator, Redeemer, Sanctifier, we baptize you. Those are not baptisms. Mom and dad at home, because they're worried and they say it's not the correct minister, probably is a valid baptism. So if it's not a baptism, then we would say, okay, well, here's a person who we presume is still in original sin. We need to give them valid baptism if we can. In the cases of baptism of desire or baptism of blood, like someone who is not baptized but is martyred, or someone who, like your person who is killed by the Rube Goldbergian meteor, and they want baptism. Well, if they're dead, there's nothing more we can do for them. So what's been given to us is something we've received in the tradition of the church, that this person has still received the graces of baptism because of that desire. And that may be what we would explain then. What happens to somebody, they were baptized incorrectly by this priest 10 years ago and then they died? Are they going to go to hell? Well, no, these people had a desire to be baptized. So I would say they would clearly fall under baptism of desire because they desired it. They thought they had received it. And God will supply the grace for them because it's something through no fault of their own. We'd also consider this invincible ignorance. But there's a difference between cases of people for whom we cannot help, like those who have died already, and those we can help, who we can just bring them down to church and they can actually get baptism. We do that because also we don't want to presume upon the grace of God. We don't want to presume. We don't want to test God to say, don't worry, God will figure it all out. No, he's given us initiative as a church to bear one another's burdens, to help correct one another's mistakes, and we need to be able to carry that out in the areas where we can carry it out. So there may be cases where we cannot fix it, that God will resolve the matter through the free gift of his grace, but we are obliged as a body of Christ to fix these matters where we can, where God has given us the ability to do that.
What do you think, Kelly? No, Kelly?
There's definitely a lot to think about. I'm going to definitely rewatch this to get some more out of it.
Oh, yeah. You should also...
you should also what, Trent?
We have a Focus episode hosted by the one and only Mr. Cy Kellett that interviewed Father Hugh Barber over this very controversy that occurred, I think, a year or two ago. Yeah. So you've got a lot of food for thought there from Father Hugh. Check that out on the Catholic Answers Focus podcast.
One thing I wish Catholics would be more cognizant, and that Father Hugh talks about this, that we would be more cognizant of, is that the sacrament of baptism does not just, and this would be enough if it did, does not just save us and justify us. It's a permanent mark on the soul. It's a permanent change in our state of being forever. And so you don't just want the baptism of desire. You want the whole deal, and you want it good with the right words, so that not only is the proper intention there, but the proper form is there. You want all of the graces that come from baptism. We've got to take a break. Right back with more tips for defending the faith with Trent Horn right after this.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the reasons we should go to Mass is because it is the food of the saints that we receive. And for the saints, they understood rightly that the time after Holy Communion that those moments are the most precious moments of our lives.
The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, live from the EWTN Chapel, every morning, 8 Eastern, on EWTN Radio and Television.
We have a big problem. Our culture is dying, and souls are in danger of being lost. The answer is conversion to Jesus Christ in His church. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a Catholic organization, and we have hundreds of teams spreading the good news throughout the country. But we need your help. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Tips for defending the faith this hour. Next hour, we'd really like you to join us and to call, whether you're Catholic or not, whether you're Christian or not, the Catholic faith and same-sex attraction with Paul Darrow. Paul is one of the folks who's profiled in the movie Desire of the Everlasting Hills. And this is an issue that, you go to, at least I do, you talk to a confirmation group or a high school group or even a college group. And for many young people, this issue of, frankly, in many cases, their misunderstanding of what the church teaches about same-sex attraction is keeping them away from the church or driving them more or tempting them away anyways, in any case. So please join us for that next hour and call with your questions. We'd love to have them. 888-318-7884. We're going now to Fred in Wisconsin, listening on 88.5 FM. Glad to have you, Fred. Go ahead with your question for Trent.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate your show and the chance to get on and talk to you. Thanks a lot.
All right.
So I was brought up as a child in the Catholic faith, I guess, but moved away from it when I was a teenager. I'm an old guy now, but I'd consider myself a humanist at this point in my life. And kind of one thing I was thinking of, one thing that strikes me when I'm listening to your shows or a variety of the shows on the channel a lot is people call in who are Christian and they feel they've done something bad. They're asking for forgiveness and talking about that, and generally the reply seems to be kind of, the Lord will forgive you and it's going to be okay, kind of. Not so much talk about making amends to who you might have done wrong to, and that's kind of the thing that seems to me that would be good and helpful, and talk about like not doing those things that seem to be bad, whatever they were, again, or and being good. And I was wondering if you could talk to that a little bit, and kind of to me also, I think you guys have a great platform here to talk about something I don't hear too much about, but I think it's something that people of all faiths can get behind, is kind of the golden rule, or being kind and compassionate to other people regardless of what their beliefs are or where they come from or stuff like that. And I don't hear much of that on the station.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Fred. How about if it's all right with you, Fred, I'll let Trent, because it's a lot already. Let's let Trent respond, and I'll come back to you, Fred.
Yeah, Fred. It's hard for me to speak on other episodes of Catholic Answers Live or even other shows on Catholic radio you may have listened to. I only know more of what I say when I'm on the air. I know a lot of people call Catholic Answers Live. Sometimes it's because they're struggling with a sin and they're wondering if God will forgive them. I think a lot of times people call our show more because they hear an argument against Catholicism they're not sure how to respond to, or there's something about the faith they're trying to understand that doesn't make as much sense to them. So those are more the calls I think that we deal with on a daily basis. But we do get people who call who struggle with wrongdoing, maybe hurting others, and what do they do about that? And I think of all the Christian denominations, Catholicism has something built in within it to reply to a concern that you have. I think some forms of Christianity, they could have what is called, Protestants call it easy believism. Dietrich
Bonhoeffer.
Oh yeah, Bonhoeffer. You knew where I was going. Yeah, Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
That's the only Dietrich I know. I don't know any other.
There's von Hildebrand.
Oh, gosh, darn it. I forgot about von Hildebrand. All right, so Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Von Hildebrand, he always gets you.
Cheap grace.
So Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran, but you knew where I was going, the phrase cheap grace. That he was a Lutheran pastor who died in the Holocaust, and he spoke about the problem of cheap grace, the idea that God forgives us of our sins, so it just doesn't really matter what we do. You could go out and kill people, whatever. And Paul dealt with this in the New Testament. People said, well, if we're forgiven, why not do evil so more grace can abound? And he says, no, of course not. So what the church teaches is that, we are separated from God. We desire evil. We desire to do bad things. And it's weird when you look at human beings. Like you look at other animals, right? Some animals are just pretty ruthless and vicious. But I feel like evil and cruelty, there's something specific about human beings that I feel like an atheistic worldview doesn't explain as well. That we talk about human beings, you're acting like an animal. We say that. Except, well, humans are animals. We're just a particular kind of animal. But it seems like there's a way we ought to be to rise above our purely animal nature. We were made for something more. And so when, as a Christian, we're baptized, we receive spiritual grace to be the adopted sons or daughters of God, and we enter into his new covenant, and we receive that spiritual life to grow closer to God and to become more conformed, to be holier, to be more like God. But we still sin. We still struggle with things. And so the church teaches that if you commit a really grave sin, you approach God through the sacrament of confession. You have to be contrite, truly sorry. And part of contrition means you repent. It means you're not going to go down that road again. You're going to make a good faith effort to not go down that road again. And in the church, we do penance. Jesus takes away the eternal punishment for our sin. The idea if we sin, we would be away from God for all eternity. But we believe that you can say some prayers or do an act of mercy to make up for a bad thing that we've done. And I know many Catholic counselors and psychologists who would also tell people who are stuck in sin they should take practical steps to not hurt other people. If pornography is hurting your marriage and hurting your spouse, use a filter, for example, or use a program to keep yourself from looking at those things. If you have angry outbursts that are hurting your relationship with your children or your friends or your family, here are practical steps that you can take to manage your anger. There's a great book called Overcoming Sinful Anger. I think it's by Father Morrow is his name. Overcoming Sinful Anger is a great book. So I think that you're right, Fred. There are some ways of approaching sin and evil that are shallow from a Christian perspective. But I do think that there are other ways that we as children of God should approach in a mature way. And I think the Catholic Church really does offer that. But I think, Fred, though, for what you bring up as a humanist, though, I would give you some food for thought. I have a hard time with labels like humanism and things like that, because it seems to make us a claim like, oh, of all the things in the universe, humans have a special kind of value. But I wonder why that is if humans are just collections of atoms like everything else. We can do different things, but badgers can do different things than us. It seems like if humans have a special value, so much so that they have an intrinsic value. Like it's wrong to use a human being merely as a means to an end, like slavery and things like that. Humans really are special parts of creation. Well, there I go. I gave my hand away with creation. I don't know if an atheistic worldview can really explain the special value that humans have, just in virtue of belonging to the human community. Because there's other non-humans that can suffer, right? There are animals, non-human animals, they can suffer, they can feel pain. So if your ethics are related to pain and reducing suffering, that's a whole ton of things. But if it's about humans are special and not just about the suffering part, I don't know. I think God creating us in his image explains that well. I dumped a lot on you. I apologize. I didn't mean to do that, but I hope that's at least a little food for thought for you. Are you still with us?
I am still with you guys. It is kind of food for thought, and I kind of, if you've got time, I can sort of reply to some of that what you just said.
If you'd like, sure.
Okay,
I haven't had a lot of chance to chat with atheists on the show, so I would like to indulge that for a bit. So go right ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So, so you were saying before about how, like sort of, when you were describing how, it's, well, anyway, I actually personally, and I think a lot of humanists too, do kind of care about the suffering of animals, but, as a fellow animal. But I think that humans do have a capacity for compassion, and all of that stuff you talked about as far as remorse about doing something regrettable, and being contrite and wanting to not do things that harm other people or cause other people bad whatever is something that can be done without any faith in God.
I agree with you that a person.
Confessional.
I agree that a person can be good without belief in God, but I have a hard time understanding the concept of there's objective goodness or evil, even defining the terms good and evil. This kind of objective.
So that gets back to my other thing about the golden rule thing, which I think is something that kind of is something that's kind of a bit close to universal, I'd say, and something that people of any kind of faith
Fred,
or beliefs.
Can I ask you a question? When the golden rule, did we create it or discover it?
Well, I think it probably was discovered, but it's interesting how it's been discovered in so many kind of different places on this world at so many different times. It's in Judaism, it's in Catholicism or Christianity, it's in Confucianism, it's in Buddhism.
Well,
it's all over the
Fred,
place,
let me ask you this then.
That's really valuable, I think.
Well, let me ask you this: if we discovered it, where is it?
What do you? I don't understand.
Right, if I discover, if Columbus discovers America, or somebody discovers a new element, we can locate it, we can find it, right? If you discover something, it's not like something we made; it's something that exists beyond us.
Okay, but you guys talk about stuff that's beyond what you can see and touch all the time. So why? I'm kind of confused and kind of surprised that you're sound like you're arguing against this.
No, but what I would say is it seems weird to me. It's we've got this universe of atoms and electrons and molecules. Oh, and there's also this rule, this command: do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Whereas and that's true. Because one could also have another rule, another golden rule, and that the rule is this: he who has the gold makes the rules. Or if you have power, those who are weak are obliged to serve the powerful. That's another rule that could be out there. I think you and I would say that rule is false, though, right?
Well, yeah, I guess, and I call this sort of statement of compassion the golden rule because I think it's kind of described like that in a lot of Christian texts, but in other religious texts, it's not. It's just kind of be nice to your neighbors or something like that, and do to your neighbor as you would to yourself or something like that. It's not really a rule or a law or anything like that.
Well, I think actually that's where we might part ways. Do you think all of us, every person, has an obligation to follow the golden rule?
I don't. Now the obligation word is kind of weird for me. I think I think it makes sense, and and I think it's something that if people keep in mind, they feel good about what they're doing. If they act with this kind of concept of compassion and kindness in mind.
Sure. Well, Fred, why don't you stay on the line, Fred? We'll get your email address. I would love to send you some resources. I enjoyed our chat. I would say that obligations only make sense among persons. Like a Scrabble board can't tell me to do something, but my wife can. So if there really were a universal obligation to follow the golden rule, I would wonder where that comes from. Maybe a universal source of goodness. I'd like to send you some resources, Fred. Give us your email address. Love that you called in. Feel free to call back anytime. Wish we had more time to chat.
No, great conversation, Fred. Thanks very much for the call. I do apologize to the callers who were left waiting, but we just weren't able to get to you this hour. Next hour, we welcome Paul Darrow. We're going to talk about Catholic faith and same-sex attraction. Your calls are welcome, whether you're Catholic or not, whether you want to call about yourself or someone else. 888-318-7884. Thanks, Trent.
Anytime. Anytime, Si.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I used to love weekends. Now I just look forward to coming back here on Monday. I'm so happy to be back here. Sarah, you're doing a great job on the board. Sarah's good at everything. That's what Darren and I were saying this morning. Sarah's good at everything. You do the board, you do the phones, you do the video cameras, and you're good at all of it. Oh, well. Our number is 888-318-7884. Paul Darrow is our guest this hour, and Paul is one of the folks you see in the movie The Desire of the Everlasting Hills, which I wish you would watch. It's a beautiful film, and three beautiful people giving their testimony about what Christ and the Christian faith have meant to them in the face of their own same-sex attraction, certainly, but also lifestyles that got out of whack, that as so many modern lives do. So to me, it's so much more than just a movie about same-sex attracted people, because it's actually a story that we're all, well, maybe not all, certainly not all of us, but a lot of us are familiar with, that the modern world tempts us here and there, or prods us to take this direction or that, and we find ourselves embroiled in excesses which are not helpful to us, and certainly are not helpful to our relationship with the Lord. So I highly recommend it to you, Desire of the Everlasting Hills. If you just type into your computer, Desire of the Everlasting Hills, you can watch it for free. It's on the computer for free. I think it comes with your computer. Again, the number is 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. One of the things that Paul Darrow says in that film and in his subsequent work, he's a very fine Catholic speaker, is that he expected judgment and not a warm welcome in the Catholic Church when he first began to explore coming back to the Catholic faith, and he did not find those things. And so this is at least one of the reasons why we like having Paul here and the other folks who are in that movie here, because we want people who perhaps struggle with same-sex attraction or perhaps struggle with sexual lives that are involved in excess to know that what you find is welcome in the Catholic Church, and we want you to find welcome in the Catholic Church. And it doesn't even matter what we want; it's the Lord wants you to find welcome in the Catholic Church. Are we all perfect? No. There are all kinds of, will you find ill-mannered people and all kinds of problems here and there in the Catholic Church and among all Christians? Yes, you most certainly will. But we just want to move past the stereotype that Christianity is a religion of judgment of those who are involved in excesses or who face trials as far as temptations, whether the trials are of a chemical sort or a emotional sort or a sexual sort, whatever the temptations might be. The Catholic Church is meant to be a welcoming home for all of us. And the fact is that in the modern world, many, many folks who deal with same-sex attraction do, in fact, find themselves embraced when they come to the church, embraced by people who don't say, we're going to pray away the gay or something like that, but who say, the Lord loves you. The Lord loves you now, today. He loved you yesterday. He loved you the day before. And all we care about as a church and as a people gathered around the Lord of love, is that you come to that love and that we come to that love with you, because we don't do it alone. We do it together as a community. I would really like to invite you to call, whether you are Christian or not. This issue, one of the things that's remarkable about this issue is, coming up on 60 now myself, a couple of years from 60, I really do think that when the gay marriage debate was going on and all of that, I think I underestimated the effect that this was having on young people who are, after all, given the great gift by God to be very concerned with fairness. And in some ways, the younger we are, the more visceral is our demand for justice. That's not fair, is what we say when we're young. And then we get older and we forget to say that. And that's not an advance. That's not a spiritual advance. That's a kind of decline. We need that energy that young people have to say, that's not fair. And you certainly find that energy in the pro-life movement, and then a new generation comes in and they fire it up again. But the young people confronted with the proposition that love is love and that gay people should have exactly what straight people have, it was a proposition of, well, that's not fair. And so to have these conversations where we move beyond that and say, well, there are other considerations at play here beyond fairness, and that it turns out that the gospel of Jesus Christ is for everybody. Everybody, no matter what temptations or obsessions, or what if you're plagued with anger, the gospel's for you. If you're obsessed with money, the gospel's for you. If you are a person with same-sex attraction, the gospel is for you. It's for me. And so I really do invite you to call 888-318-7884. If you're a parent of a young person who is in the That's Not Fair place, 888-318-7884. If you're facing this issue yourself, or if you're in your family, 888-318-7884. Paul Darrow, thanks for being with us.
Oh, excuse me. It is my pleasure. I cannot tell you how much I've learned since I've come back to the church, listening to questions being answered on Catholic Answered. Answers.
Well, that's very gracious of you to say it. Thank you. As the person who just goes, just turns to the other person and goes, Jimmy, or, Trent, I find myself, I can say the same thing. So, it is, and it's amazing in its very simplicity. All we do is take questions about the Catholic faith and answer them, and it has miraculous, powerful results. You must get questions about the Catholic faith that are something like, why? Why would you, a person who, in a certain sense, had it all, you were working as a international model, and you had all this, all the things that we are supposed to aspire to. Why would you give that up and come into the Catholic Church?
Well, it was against my will.
You were dragged in, huh?
Well, I was one of those people who I was happy. I could not believe the attention I was getting. Of course, my modeling career was way earlier than my reversion. But I was just, everything was perfect pretty much, except that I could not find perfect love. I could not find perfect sexual gratification, or gratification, period, from living the lifestyle. But I buried that so deeply because I was able to enjoy the worldly pleasures which overshadowed all of that. But it was literally by the grace of God. They say there's no silver bullet when it comes to pushing yourself away from the lifestyle you're living. But there is a silver bullet, and it is the Holy Spirit. And so that's why. That's the answer.
Again, if you'd like to speak with Paul Darrow, you are very welcome here, whether you are Catholic or not, whether you're Christian or not. If you want to talk about the Catholic Church and same-sex attraction, you are welcome. 888-318-7884. I try to picture this in my mind, this man. You have a partner, you've settled down into this lifestyle, and then you see a nun on TV with an eye patch on and a traditional woman religious garb, and at first she seems so ridiculous to you, but very quickly you got over the sense that she was ridiculous. I'm talking about Mother Angelica, of course. What happened?
Well, I didn't get over the idea that she was ridiculous until she kept popping up on the screen. I'd never seen this woman before in my life, and I was always channel surfing. And after that one time, I made fun of her. She said something when I was about to switch the channel. Matter of fact, I called my former lover into the room just to make fun of her. And when I was about to switch the channel, she said something that was so moving and so profound that it literally jolted me. But I still switched the channel. But over the following weeks and months, every now and then she would pop up, draw me in like magic. And I realized the little bits and pieces that I would get from her was that she knew and spoke the truth about her faith and about God. I was an atheist, by the way, and agnostic at best. And so I always thought spiritual truth was just somebody's vague, undefinable theory, but Mother Angelica taught me truth really does exist. And her kind words, her words about God's loving grace and mercy, eventually pointed me to the church, to His church, to the Catholic Church. And from then on, I never looked back.
Again, I want to give out that number. Lines starting to fill up. It's still a couple lines open, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. If this is an issue in your own life of your family, or it's just something you'd like to understand better, the Catholic Church and those with same-sex attraction, 888-318-7884. This I hear all the time. The Catholic teaching on chastity, it's not realistic for anybody, but it's particularly not realistic for those who identify as gay. What do you say about that?
Well, Cy, as you know, there are many myths out there about the Catholic Church. One of them, this is right up there with the one that where people say that the Catholic Church is not a Christian church. And this is right up there with that as well. Because whether you have same-sex attraction, opposite-sex attraction, whether your temptations are things that we don't even know, you always have the chance not to give into the inclination. And that's what a priest taught me once. He said, we always have the chance not to give into the inclination. And with that sentence, and with the Holy Spirit, my love for God, instantly and effortlessly, I became chaste after being a sex addict for decades, and having been so promiscuous, I would hate to even tell you the numbers on tonight, because I don't know who is listening.
Well, okay, so that sounds quite miraculous, and I don't doubt it in the least. But not everyone is going to share that experience. So you must run into people like through Courage, which I know you do speaking for Courage International, and for whom this is an ongoing trial. And for such a person, is chastity realistic? And also, is just a full embrace of the Catholic Church realistic?
It definitely is, Cy. And, you know, my life has always been about lowered expectations, and that's why I took off like a duck in water when I started getting attention from men and feeling loved, not the kind of love that I needed, but when I started feeling love from men. So for me, I had lowered expectations. I thought that I maybe could never become chaste, and boom, it happened. But that is very unusual. However, to answer your question, yes, it is very possible, because we basically are fulfilling something that needs to be fulfilled, I believe, by using each other for gratification. And again, there's a difference. A lot of people will say, well, you know what? That's you. We're not promiscuous. But the truth is, after all my many years, I've never known a couple who eventually was not promiscuous. So this, because of their need for something more. And so, yes, it is very possible through prayer, through friendship, through support, through encouragement. And that was the thing I was lacking. I never had that kind of a relationship with men. And Courage International, for me, is by far the best, well, it's the only truly Catholic apostolate that is approved through Rome, but miracles happen there. It reminds me of when I do prison ministry. The Holy Spirit is there. Yeah. And Courage as well. 888-318-7884. Our guest is Paul Darrow. We're talking about the Catholic Church and same-sex attraction. If you have practical questions in that regard, if you have theoretical questions in that regard, you need help addressing someone else's question, you are very welcome. I know I've kept callers waiting a little bit here. I'll get to you right when we come back. 888-318-7884.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I don't like looking back. I prefer to look forward and keep moving forward. There's plenty to cover. I do a lot of research and try to dig out the bits and pieces of a life or of an agenda that people don't want to talk about.
The World Over with Raymond Arroyo. Thursday night, 8 Eastern on EWTN Radio and Television.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. So happy to get to welcome Paul Darrow here. One of the, I don't know if stars is the right word, but I'm going to go with stars of the movie Desire of the Everlasting Hills. A well-known Catholic speaker, a member of Courage International, here to talk about the Catholic Church and same-sex attraction. Do you have any feelings about we're very, very picky about words, and if someone uses, I don't know. Sometimes you use the word gay, and then there's a whole group will say, "Don't use that word. Use this word," or homosexual, or same-sex attraction. How do you feel about all the words, the vocabulary around all of this?
I have a problem with a lot of the vocabulary around it, especially how many letters there are now.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I had a hard time remembering them all. But for me, the main word, and perhaps you're thinking about this as well, gay.
Yeah.
So when I was 15 years old, I stumbled upon a gay beach without knowing it was, and I was in the water and I was getting all this attention. And I was shocked. All these older men were speaking with me. And somebody followed me out of the water, walked me to my towel and said, "Are you gay?" No, he said, "How long have you been gay?"
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, "What's gay?" And he looked down and walked away. And I know for years we used the word gay because nobody knew what it meant. Way back then, instead of saying, we're homosexual or we're this, we would, in college even, they would use the word gay. Little did we know that a lot of people knew about it. But for a while, not that many knew about it. So it doesn't describe, the word gay is such a beautiful word, just like the rainbow is so beautiful. Yeah. And I think of gay in a whole different way. And I don't want to offend anyone. People can choose how they want to speak and what words they want to use. But for me and for most of my brothers and sisters who are living like me, trying to seek chastity or have found chastity, they use the word same-sex attraction because it's more descriptive. I mean, they use the word gay. It could have been goofy, or it could have been puppy, it could have been happy. So everybody else that's happy now, you get mixed up there. So it's a long
I got
explanation, but it's the truth.
And sometimes we hear the critique that it's it creates an identity where we don't create identity about other aspects of our personality or our preferences. We don't go like, I'm a chocolate, which I would be if we identified by our food preferences. Or maybe possibly an eclair. I don't know. But do you see what I'm saying? That there's a kind of identity created around what is merely an attraction or a preference.
Yes, and it's a made-up word.
Yeah.
I guess most words maybe are made up today, but most of them have a history. And so, as you know, as Catholics, we think of ourselves, everybody has one identity, and that is a child of God, a son of God, a daughter of God. And for me, to call myself anything other than that when we're referring to an identity reduces me to a person that has nothing to do with who I was. Yeah. I mean, I don't use that word now because I don't think of myself as gay. I think of myself as having same-sex attraction.
I said I would go to the phones, and then I didn't go to the phones. I'm sorry. I'm just enjoying talking with Paul Darrow, our guest. You can see him in the movie Desire of the Everlasting Hills. It is a beautiful movie about healing and wholeness that all of us it can really, really benefit from. It gives you a good sense of hope. But I want to go now to Mary in Melbourne, Florida, listening on Divine Mercy Radio. You're first up, Mary. Go ahead with your question for our guest, Paul Darrow.
Good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I was listening as you started this evening, and I have a good friend who is same-sex attracted and Catholic, as am I, and I'm trying to find a way to walk with her and help her understand that this is not what God has for you, that it's so much better what He does have for you. And how do I do that without actually pushing her away? Because I do love her, and I do want her to have a full relationship with God and in the Catholic Church, and she still, she feels like she doesn't fit in the Catholic Church because she is same-sex attracted.
Paul?
Well, my first question was going to be, but I think you answered it, Mary. And Mary, thank you for the question. It sounds like she does not attend the Catholic Church, that she doesn't go to Mass, because it sounded like it, towards the very end you were saying that she doesn't feel welcome. A couple of things. It depends where she is. I mean, she calls herself Catholic. We know a lot of people, a lot of politicians that call themselves Catholic, and we don't understand how they could be Catholic because of what they approve of. But it really depends where she is at this point in her life. If she is somebody who actually goes to church and believes in God with all of her heart, or if she doesn't, but she wants to take that step, she will be shocked when she goes into the Catholic Church and sees how it welcomes her. I was not in the Catholic, I left the church for over 30 years. And I felt a little bit like Mary did, what happens when I come back. I have never felt more loved or more welcome anywhere than in the Catholic Church. And so, but there's another thing I want to say. When I was 15 years old, if you were my friend who loved me, and thank you for loving her, we should love everyone, for sure. But if you had come to me when I was 15 years old and said, Paul, why don't you come to church? I would have come up with some excuse because I wouldn't want to insult you. I would have said, well, you know what, I'm really busy, or some excuse. Or I would have made an excuse and said, well, they hate me. I know about Catholicism. I read about it. My friends tell me about it. They're just hypocrites, and they discriminate against people like me, so I can't go. But and that's the same thing for parents. You have to really see where your children or friends are in their journey, their faith journey. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Okay, is that all right for you, Mary?
Yeah, and my other question is, do you think, would it be appropriate for me to get your book for her? Or should I not do that?
Unfortunately, I have not written a book yet, unless you're addressing Cy.
Oh, everyone should get my book. Definitely. That's 100%. Paul, get the answer right on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
no.
misunderstood. I thought
No,
Paul
Paul
had written a book.
No, but I would suggest something to you, Mary. watch the film Desire of the Everlasting Hills, and it's free. You can get it online.
It's a film.
Yeah,
and
I think that might be. I mean, just watching the film, you might get a sense of maybe this is something you could watch with your friend. But you know your friend better than I do. Paul, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I've had ministers who are in Protestant churches that embrace everything about homosexuality and the gay community, who have contacted me and said, even though I don't agree with things that are in that film, I am very impressed, and God bless you for welcoming the Holy Spirit into your life.
Wow.
And so you never know. What Sai said is exactly what I would have said. You have to feel her out and just. But has she? I'd be curious if she ever gave you any indication that she has any desire to really be a Catholic and to follow the teachings of the Catholic Church in the event that there is no discrimination coming from within the Church towards her.
Mary, I'm going to leave it there. Lots of folks on the line. As a matter of fact, our number is 888-318-7884. Two lines open. Linda and Richard, I've kept you waiting a little bit, but I have to keep you waiting just a few seconds more. We have a very, very quick break, and then we will be back with more with Paul Darrow. If you're thinking about calling and you're like, I'm not sure they want to talk to me, I just want to tell you right now, we do want to talk to you, and we'd love it if you'd pick up the phone and call. Whether you agree with us or not, whatever the help is you're looking for, 888-318-7884. Right back with more with Paul Darrow on this Monday afternoon here in Southern California on Catholic Answers Live.
This is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Thank you for listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Most of us Catholic parents agree our number one goal in life is to pass on the faith to our children. But here's the bad news. Today's world has a million ways to steal your kid's soul. Don't be afraid, says Father Sebastian Walsh. God loves your children even more than you do, and He desires their salvation more than anything. In his groundbreaking new book, Always a Catholic, Father Walsh shows you how to cooperate with God to bring about the fulfillment of His will for your kids. Always a Catholic reminds us that keeping our kids in the faith is about the way we live our Catholicism in our own lives and as a family from day to day. Order your copy of Always a Catholic by visiting shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Paul Darrow is our guest, one of the featured persons in, there's three people featured in The Desire of the Everlasting Hills. Paul, one of them. And you were in that movie not too long after becoming Catholic, I gather. Or were you in the church for a while?
No. A priest overheard me talking to some guys at a table at the only conference I'd ever been to in my life. It was a one-night conference, and there were like 20 people there. And that morning he said, "We're doing a film, would you like to be in it?" And it's a big, long story, but again, that's the Holy Spirit. He didn't know my real last name. He knew nothing about me.
Wow. That is remarkable. Well, I thank you for doing it, because I know it's meant so much to so many people. I'm going to go back to callers. Sorry, I was supposed to go to Linda in Monroe, New York, listening to EWTN on Sirius XM Satellite Radio, Channel 130. Linda, go ahead with your question for Paul Darrow.
Hi, Cy. Thanks for taking my call, and hello, Paul. I actually saw the movie Desire of Everlasting Hills. It was recommended by my pastor, because I have an adult daughter who's same-sex attracted, and she's almost 30, and she's actually in a very monogamous relationship right now with another. They're both very nice young women. My daughter, when she came out of college, like a senior, I think, she told my husband and I that she didn't want to get married to her boyfriend and that she was gay. And then she went through a few years where she lived a lifestyle that was agnostic, like angry at religion.
Mm-hmm.
We actually went on a family trip to Knock in 2019, right before COVID.
Oh.
And she listened to a service with my husband, and when she came back, she was open to religion. And I was so grateful. And I actually was having my own, I'm a cradle Catholic, reversion of religion, because my father had died. I went to confession. I cried like a baby, and I completely changed.
Yep.
To the point where I say the rosary every day. I say 15 St. Bridget prayers every day.
Wow.
I'm believing and thinking of God all the time. Anyway, my daughter, is going on with her life, and then she met this nice young woman who's also gay, but also was Jewish, that converted to Christianity. And at first they were going to, Episcopal churches, and
that seems about right. Yeah, they end up in the Episcopal
church.
church.
Any church, actually, to tell you the truth, Si, and Paul,
Yeah.
because
Well, Linda, how can Paul help you? What would you like from him?
I pray for her every day, but my daughter and her partner's becoming Catholic, actually. There's an outreach program in Manhattan, and they know that they're gay, but she's still going through RCIA.
Wow.
And I pray for my daughter. That's all I feel like I could do. I'm never going to stop loving her. How can, they think they could be Catholic and gay. And
I see.
Even though
and
we got it all.
Right. I'm sorry. I think whenever I talked, I was cutting you out, Linda, and I apologize for that. But certainly you encounter that. I'm sure you've encountered that yourself, Paul, in the Catholic Church. The quote-unquote welcoming priest or community who tells you, don't worry about this. This is no problem. Come on in. How do you address that, Paul?
Well, again, thank you for calling in. And the situation is, we have to clarify. There is nothing wrong with your daughter and her friend to go to the Catholic Church and be Catholics. But it depends what kind of Catholic they want to be. It would be sort of like if the priest if I went to a parish and wanted to join the parish and said, I just want you to know up front, Father, I work for Planned Parenthood, and I am pro-abortion. That would really take the priest back, and I'm sure he would have some things to speak to you about. So to answer Si's questions, unfortunately, and I just mentioned this the other day to somebody, when I was coming back to the church, I was naive. I didn't even know you were supposed to be chaste. I missed that part. It was I want to go. I believe in God. Like the Catholic Church, I felt called to the Catholic Church because of my background. I received all the sacraments by the time I was 15 or 14. And so the Catholic Church. But I didn't realize that I had to be chaste. And that's where I tell people it was like I hit a giant brick wall. And again, through God's grace and through courage, the apostolate, meeting people and knowing people like that, and through love. I believe prayers help so much. I had a Polish grandmother who was the only person I knew back then who prayed the rosary constantly. And so I think prayers helped me to come back as well. But to address the situation that you're talking about, they're good people. They want to go to church. They could go to a Catholic church. But if you're going, like all of us, when I go to a Catholic church, when you go to a Catholic church, you're striving. If you go to confession and have something to confess, you're striving to work your way from those sins. And in this case, again, if two people to get started, want to go back to the church, that's fine. But to answer Sai's question, when I came back to the church, as I was saying, I had no idea he had to be chaste, et cetera, et cetera. But as I learned that, I wanted the courage apostolate in my diocese. But when the local bishop objected, I had to drive, 2 hours each way. But when I was trying to see why they were objecting, they said, we already have a potluck. We have a LGBT potluck. So I went to that potluck a couple of times, and at every table, there were nuns, there was a priest, but at every table that I walked around, everyone was discussing, we really got to change the church. They have to come into the modern world. They have to catch up with us. They're so wrong. And it's like, you got to be kidding. And this was, the bishop was promoting them and saying that courage could not come because, we already have that taken care of. And so years ago, I went to Dignity and some of the other so-called welcoming LGBT community Catholic organizations. They weren't really Catholic. But you know what? That is not Catholicism. That is not the teachings of the church. So how do I feel about that? I feel it's very sad for me. It's very, very sad. And people are being led into darkness because we all have love. The Catholic Church is about love. But we have to speak the truth on any subject like that.
Indeed we do. Yeah, but it does feel like we it's certainly not just with people who face same-sex attraction, but the contracepting couple finds the welcoming priest who doesn't tell them the truth, and young people facing the sins that young people find the priest who doesn't tell them the truth, or it's, and I shouldn't just say priest, all of us. Jesus preached repent and believe the good news, and we don't like the repent part. But that's the good part. We think it's not the good part, but that's the good part.
And so,
yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I'm sorry. And the saddest moments are when they tell you that in confession.
Oh, yes. Right.
Just be monogamous, do your best. And doing my best is not good enough. I tell the priest that. But I'm chaste, so that isn't my issue. But my friends have told me certain priests, and I've had those priests and had spoken with them and said, Father, that's
not true.
That best is not good enough.
Linda, I'm going to say thanks because there's lots and lots of folks on the line who want to talk with Paul Darrow before we go. So I hope that was helpful to you. God bless you, and much praise for you for loving your daughter and staying the loving mother. I think that's that's an example to all of us, and thank you for that. Richard in Chicago, watching on YouTube. You're up next, Richard. Go ahead with your question for Paul Darrow.
Hi, Paul. This is Rick. I'm curious about something. I'm a public school teacher. And, I'm frank about this. I have a lot of gay students. I have a lot of students whose parents are same-sex couples. And I don't really know what to do sometimes because they don't think they're wrong. They are very sure of themselves. And they really do think the Catholic Church is just on the wrong side of history. And I don't know what to do. I don't know, because it seems to me that, frankly, the culture's gone in a different direction. Most people under 40 don't agree with you who aren't. If they're not religious, right, if a person is not Catholic or a strict Christian, if they're under 40, most people are cool with in this issue. It seems the ship's left the dock, really, in terms of culture. I don't know what else to say. And the other issue I've seen, and this tears my heart out, is the conservative families. When they have a gay teen, that kid does not feel love, does not feel accepted. He feels as though there's something wrong with him. And I don't know. It just seems to me that I don't know how to square that circle because, let me put it this way: At the very least, we need to make sure everybody understands that human dignity and respect aren't negotiable, no matter who you are.
Paul?
Well, thank you. And you really hit the nail on the head. And it isn't just same-sex attraction, homosexuality, homosexual tendencies that has infiltrated the schools. The same thing that you said, what the parents say and the friends say and the school says, other students, they use the same excuse for anything that they want to, I hate to use this word, but anything that they want to inflict on the rest of the world. Because, again, religion is not embraced in schools today. And if you're speaking about a Catholic school, even there, the teachers have a very hard time. And you know, there's a senator who is very conservative and very much according to the teachings of his church, and I don't know if he was Catholic, until, and there were bills that came up that he would vote on regarding same-sex attraction. And when he found out that his son came to him and said, "Dad, I'm gay," he turned around immediately and started to embrace what his son wanted him to embrace. We have to embrace our children. We have to love them. Your love for your child should never change no matter what they tell you they're doing, whether you agree with it or not. But to think, you know, I mentioned when I was 15, it took me 3 days, less than 3 days, to go from being a good Catholic kid to embracing homosexuality and never wanting to go to church again. And it almost took me a lifetime to get back to the other side. So, Rick, you can just do your best, be a great example, but you're not going to convince anyone. There's nothing you can say until they come to you and tell you that they want to change, or they're upset or depressed or down because of what the homosexual life is doing to them, or these homosexual feelings.
I want to follow up on that a little bit. We got to take a quick break. Richard, thank you very, very much for the call. More calls coming up for Paul Darrow, our guest. We're talking about the Catholic Church and same-sex attraction. Your call, whether you agree or disagree, whether it's an issue that you face yourself or someone else faces and you'd like some help with it, you are welcome here. 888-318-7884.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
What a great grace it is to have the opportunity to use the airwaves for the honor and glory of God, to be able to talk to the hearts of individuals and meet them where they are in their relationship with our Lord, and also to encourage them forward.
Women of Grace with Johnnette Williams. This morning, 3 a.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Our guest is Paul Darrow, one of the folks you'll meet in the movie Desire of the Everlasting Hills, also a speaker for Courage International, right? They can go to the website and you do talks for Courage International?
Yes, I'm with Catholic Speakers Organization, CatholicSpeakers.com, and Courage asks me to speak from time to time, but I've never once in my life asked to speak. I didn't ask to be with Catholic Speakers. But somehow they find me, and I've gone coast to coast and in Europe and Italy, France. So again, I just go with the flow.
Well, you can always contact us if you want to. If you want to reach Paul Darrow for a speaking engagement, you can just send it to us at radio@catholic.com. And send anything to radio@catholic.com, and we'll deal with it. Before I go to Jordan in Cincinnati, I wanted to follow up on what Richard said. And one of the things that I do notice among us Catholics, and maybe this afflicts all Christians, I don't know, especially when like folks who really believe that the gospel is the truth, is this sense of, I have two gay neighbors down the street. What am I supposed to do? And sometimes the answer, I think, is maybe, invite them over, on the 4th of July to have a beer and a hot. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, you're not responsible to straighten everybody out.
That is definitely true. And going further, it's interesting because any other group, usually, if a group feels discriminated against, or if there's a group that doesn't agree with your group, they're sort of in different places, and they're not in your family. Politics, for example, if you have one political persuasion, you can have family members who don't agree with you, but it's not for them as big of an issue as this. So what happens is, like that senator I mentioned, hey, I know my best uncle or my best favorite cousin or this neighbor who takes care of my mother. She's 90 years old and takes care of her, and they're gay. So that's wonderful. They're wonderful people, but you're not going to fix them if they come to you and ask you for some advice. Give it to them, but they're probably not looking for advice, and again, they have to want the advice. And the best thing you can do is be a good example of what it is to be Catholic, because they're coming from like wolves all around, especially if you're Catholic. We were the biggest target. When I was a gay activist, we marched up Fifth Avenue without 80,000 people who agreed with us or had the same-sex attraction who were gay. And we went by all these churches. I can't remember which ones, I think there was Episcopalian, I think there was a Presbyterian. Not a word. They were just brick and mortar. We got in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral, and it wasn't planned. I could feel my adrenaline rushing. We were screaming and hollering and hoping to disrupt Mass. And people say, oh, well, because it's the biggest church. I say no. The Presbyterian Church is pretty big. The Episcopal Church is pretty big. We were not thinking of numbers. And in hindsight, Cy, what I've said before, in hindsight, I believe, because somehow I believe that we recognized truth. In hindsight, that's what I think. We recognized the truth that we didn't want to hear. And
that's
so,
an extraordinary story. That is really something.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, the Catholic Church is identifiable, and that's one of its marks. You know it. I mean, I always am interested in the Catholics who will say, the Catholic Church needs to be more pro-life. And I always say, do you think every single person on earth doesn't know the Church's position on pro-life? Everybody knows it. Her enemies know it. Her friends know it. Everybody knows it. She's pro-life. And it doesn't mean we couldn't do a better job at it, but it's clear what we are. Jordan in Cincinnati, I kept you waiting, listening on 910 AM. Glad to have you. Jordan, go ahead with your question for Paul Darrow.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Paul. My name is Jordan. I'm actually a Protestant, really interested in possibly converting to Catholicism. I'm in RCIA right now. But this is sort of like the big issue for me. I was talking to my deacon, and he said that, like, when he was converting, his big thing was accepting the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. And, like, I guess for me, I actually have a lot of a few friends, good friends, that are living together, and they're I guess not technically same sex, but that gets into the whole transgender issue and stuff. But I don't know, like. For me, I've just always had a problem accepting this teaching, and I guess for me, the thing I wrestle with is what if one of them like came to me like looking to like investigate Christianity? You know, like I don't know if I could be like, here, like come to the Catholic Church because I don't know my own stance on that, and it's like if I told them like, oh, like I've gone to the Episcopal Church and like they seem really LGBT friendly and stuff, like is the Catholic, like one, would I be a hypocrite, and two, like it in your opinion, would I be sending them like, you know, would I not be helping them? Like would I be sending them to hell according to that? The Catholic view.
They're interested in Christianity, and you sent them to what you thought was the gay-friendly church.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is something I wrestle with too.
Okay, Paul.
Well, again, another great question, and the situation is that you're not responsible for these people that are coming to you. You're trying to do your best. And unfortunately, as we had mentioned earlier on the air, if you were listening, they get the same advice at Catholic churches once in a while. It's erroneous, it's unfair, it saddens real Catholics, but it's like, yeah, keep living the way you're living, it's okay. So if you send somebody to the Catholic Church and got one of those priests, you'd be in the same position pretty much as if you sent them to a gay-friendly church. However, the Catholic Church is so different. And I know a lot of people who have converted to Catholicism because of their same-sex attraction. And I believe I would have converted to Catholicism had I been a Protestant when I came across dear Blessed Mother Angelica. Because there was so much truth there. And the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, so many Catholics, there was just a survey, don't even know or don't believe that it is the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. But what I wanted to say is I know many people encourage people who are not encourage the Catholic apostolate, but want to become chaste and follow the teachings of the Catholic Church. And for many of them, I'm thinking of one Protestant minister, as a matter of fact. He was a Protestant minister, and his one of the hardest things, I believe, was that it is the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. I know somebody right now who's converting to Catholicism. He's going through RCI, but he just is afraid to go the next step. So he's going to remain Episcopalian, at least for now. But if you're doing your best and somehow they're misled, then it isn't your fault. However, the best thing is to be informed and let them know that they are loved in the Catholic Church. Like I said, I've never felt more welcome. People go out of their way. If they hear that, oh, he has same-sex attraction, everybody, you know, if there's 0.001% of the world doing something, I'm thinking of a particular identity, suddenly all the laws have to change for that 0.001%. And so when I go to church, and some people know that I have SSA, they go out of their way to be friendly. And then they discover I'm chaste, and they're pretty thrilled with that.
Jordan, did that help you?
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I'll recommend to folks Desire of the Everlasting Hills. You can you can check out the Courage website. If you just put Courage Ministry or Courage Catholic in your search engine, it'll bring you there. If you're listening, you're thinking, I would like to bring Paul Darrow out to talk at my church or my school or group, just send us an email, radio@catholic.com. So there were more callers, but I'm out of time. I don't have enough time to go back to the callers, but I do want to say thanks, Paul. I appreciate you taking the time to come talk with us. I hope you'll do it again.
It's only by God's grace that I am here, and I hope God's grace gives me the privilege to be here again. Thank you very, very much. God bless you and Catholic Answers.
Thank you very much. Tomorrow, 2 hours of open forum. Call up, ask anything you want. Even if you disagree with us, we'd love to talk with you. If you have an urgent question about today's program and you want to get in touch with us, you can send a note to radio@catholic.com. We'll be happy to get back. If you're interested in seeing that movie, just search The Desire of the Everlasting Hills. You'll see Paul Darrow in there. And that'll about wrap it up for us. As sad as it is, I got to go 22 more hours without Catholic Answers. I think I can make it through. See you tomorrow, God willing, right here, Catholic Answers Live.